Welcome to the Howell Business Beat, where we delve deep into the dynamic world of entrepreneurship, innovation, workforce talent, economic development, and much more, bringing you the latest insights and strategies to thrive in today's competitive business landscape. I'm Janelle Smith, president of the Howell Area Chamber of Commerce, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Diane Samples. Welcome, Diane.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
And we have the pleasure of talking with John Sellek, Chief Strategist and CEO of Harbor Strategic Public Affairs today. Welcome, John.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we are thrilled to have you here. And this podcast is very timely as we are just coming off the presidential race and election. And This is a little bit of your background, just a little bit, right? But you're more of an expert in that than I am. So could you just share a little bit about Harbor Strategic and your background and kind of why you're here today?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's fitting to say first and foremost, I'm a small business person. I had to be an entrepreneur. I worked in public relations and political campaigns and state government my whole career since I had left college at Michigan State. So I've worked in the governor's office. I've worked in the legislature. I've worked in the attorney general's office. Some people say that AG stands for attorney general, but it really stands for aspiring governor. So those people all ran for governor. That's just how politics and government work. And at some point, I grew up in a family where my grandmother was one of the first female realtors in the Lansing area and started her own firm back in the day. So I grew up with that, knowing that that's what she did. And my dad had his own business as well. So it was always lurking in my background, somewhere in the back of my head, that I'd rather be my own boss and I'd rather do this a different way or my own way as much as you can when you're an entrepreneur. But so I started that 6 years ago now, almost. Coming up on our 6-year anniversary. And everything's going well. So I live in Brighton, but my business is based in Lansing because my career was mostly around the Capitol. But we do regular straight up public relations work, but then we do a lot of work around the Capitol, not just politics, but we take our political expertise and all those battles that you see going on TV to what happens on the policy fights after the elections are over. So we help corporations and nonprofits, trade groups, chambers all over the state to work on policy that those groups need to be able to succeed. And there's a lot of competition out there for a legislator's time and attention, just like there is for a voter's. Then you have to figure out different tactics and how to do that and do it the right way, not drive everybody crazy or anything like that. But, one example I'd give right now that will tie into almost anybody that's listening is this group called Save My Tips. We work with the restaurant workers, the bartenders, and the servers who depend on tips. Right now, because of something that happened all the way back in 2018, I won't bore you with the story. By February, as a lot of people have now heard, that system will come to an end. And the servers and the bartenders are saying, we're going to lose our income. And you hear so many stories of people that start off either as a single mom or didn't have the support of their parents or went to college and got 5 degrees and none of them fit. And so they're a people person. They went into the business and they're making all the money they need to make, and they can have the flexible hours. And what they do is not a 9-to-5, as we know. And that's all, not even just that threat of being taken away. It will be taken away when we get to February if the legislature doesn't do something. So we gathered servers and bartenders all over Michigan, all the way down to the border with Ohio and Indiana, setting up meetings so that they can sit down with legislators, and like this almost, and talk. And the legislators who worked in the industry in the past, they get it. It doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican because this is not a partisan issue. They go, I already know. I'm with you. I've got a lot of things I have to deal with to get there with you. But we know that the way this was written somewhere in a private room by people who just put all their dream fantasies of policy change, it doesn't reflect the reality of what's going on. It certainly doesn't seem to reflect the reality of what the actual workers want. So we are hoping the legislature, now that they're back post-campaigning, we'll be able to take a look at this between now, at least in the end of the year. That would be better for us. But maybe we're going to have to go right up to the deadline. Deadlines motivate adults just like they motivate kids as well. So we'll see how that goes. But that's an example somehow of all the political work we did kind of converts into what we do on a PR and a legislative side.
Oh, great example. And I'm just going to do a quick plug here because we also have a town hall coming up on December 2nd with our Chamber Alliance partnership, along with our Livingston County Convention and Visitors Bureau. We'll have Wendy Block from the Michigan Chamber at that, along with Justin, I'm sorry, his last name is failing me right now.
Winslow?
Thank you.
Yes.
From the Michigan
You've
Lodging
got
and
the
Restaurant
top, you got the
Association.
top dogs. All right.
So they'll be at that town hall. We're still finalizing a location, but that information will be coming out in Chamber Communications. So we'd love to get as many businesses there to be informed on the changes that this poses and could happen as soon as is it February 21st of 2025, and really just you mentioned the wages piece of it, but there's even the piece of the earned sick leave that will be wildly impactful to especially small business. So making sure that our small businesses are aware of that potential impact, and then making sure that they are making their voices and their concerns known. So there's a lot of implications to that, and like you said, it's kind of a very broad piece of legislation that stands to impact a lot of different industries that it doesn't really make sense for. So more to come on that, and
its own rabbit hole.
It is. I have a feeling that this is how this may go, but we'll try to keep it on track as much as we can. But today we're really here to talk about the presidential race, and it's clearly controlled the media narrative in 2024, and with things appearing close right down to the election day, what should we know about how the race turned out?
Well, apparently President Trump is going to be president again, so that's the most obvious thing, right? And I've been lucky to be able to come and speak before the Chamber Alliance in the past with my Democrat political partner Adrian Heeman under the baldly bipartisan mantra, but we've been doing a lot of talks over the last few days since election eve, frankly, talking to media, talking to trade groups about what happened. There's a lot more to unfold because, frankly, the biggest thing that happened in the elections, amongst all the craziness that happened, was that polling failed again. Polling did not justly indicate where we're going. And it's not because pollsters are trying to deceive us, even though there are some bad actors out there trying to influence the conversation around polling as time is going. But they just can't get a hold of people. That's the bottom line. Who of us wants to be bothered, right? How many, did you enjoy all the text messages that you got during the campaign?
I had Elon Musk calling me at like 11:30 at night.
Did you pick up?
I did not pick up, but someone else did pick up. One of our, in fact, it was Andrea Daleen picked up, and she said that Elon wasn't there. She answered it. It was no one was there. So
you know how many text messages I got that said, "Kamala here. Can we talk?"
Yep.
Right? All the time. And so pollsters are dealing when trying to contact people. Now they went from being able to contact anybody they wanted on landlines at a much slower time in the world. Now they can't do that unless you're really, really old and stubbornly holding on to that. They're contacting people via cell phones, but if you're getting an unlisted phone number or a number you don't recognize, most people won't answer it. They try to adjust that by either basically emailing or running ads targeted at individual people they know from the voter file they want to speak with, or they're texting you very specifically because they've looked at the voter file. They know they need to construct a mix of voters: Dem, Republican, Independent, old, young, all the things, men, women. They need to make a certain mix to try to get to where they think the electorate will be on election day. And the biggest problem, in the simplest way to talk about it, is not only aren't enough people answering, but then the pollster has to kind of guess where they think the electorate will be on election day. So then they have to alter the mix. So if they only get 3 African-American voters to answer, but it's a statewide poll, they're going to have to, that's a gross exaggeration, but they're going to have to adjust it to fit what the population level is and also what they think the turnout will be on election day. And that's just a really nearly impossible job. So they're working on it, and it's not that it isn't useful information. No campaign is going to stop polling or using data to do that, but we are led to believe that, all the battleground states, all 7 of them, were within fighting range, and Trump swept all of them. And Trump did better in nearly every county, meaning Harris did worse than Joe Biden from 2020 to 2024 in nearly every county. And there's a lot more untangling to figure out what that means. But in general, what I think it means watching is Democrats use the reproductive rights issue because it got a big response in 2022. Governor Whitmer got almost 43% in Livingston County in 2022. And the reproductive rights ballot initiative got 48%. So those are like losing numbers, but they're really high for that kind of cause here. And they knew it worked, and they were ahead of the game. Governor Whitmer was super aggressive on using that issue during that campaign season to motivate women and men to go out and vote almost on that issue. But under President Biden, because his approval rating numbers were so bad, they still are. He's at 56% disapprove. That's rough. Like, that's the worst, basically. They don't have a lot of other issues to work on. The economy is struggling, and that's the main thing I was going to say, is that the economy caused a lot of people, including women, white women that they kept saying were automatically going for Harris no matter what based on that issue. They said, no, actually, you said we fixed it in 2022 here in Michigan. And I'm more concerned about gas prices, food prices, sending my kids to college, affording my house insurance, even getting a house, right? All those things added up. And so the economic message basically won the day for President Trump in a much wider way than any of the polling was showing us.
Yeah, that's it's all very fascinating.
It is.
For
Like
sure.
one example I looked up in the Livingston County election results, Donald Trump basically got the same percentage of the Livingston County vote that he did in 2020, about 60%. He actually did a 0.5% better, which in a close election actually does matter. Halves matter, right? And if you consider how every political figure you talk to in Livingston County is basically saying that, starting over in Brighton and the surrounding area, that it is turning more blue, that the city of Brighton goes blue now, right? That the suburbs are filling up out here. We're like now like the exurbs of Western Wayne and Oakland County, and more importantly in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. So that part of the county then slowly inching its way toward Howell, if it's not already there, is getting softer for the GOP. Yet Trump still improved his margin by 0.5%. So there's a lot of people here who should have voted for Harris and did not, because they didn't hear enough about the economic message. And that tells a lot to our business owners and your members of your coalition. The voters are concerned about the economics of everything. That can mean they're supportive of you. It can also mean that they're frustrated and mad that they're paying X amount of dollars for products. And our business owners know that they can't get around that. They're facing increased cost pressures on all their supplies and their labor and everything else. So it's a big mess. So President Trump has a mandate to do something about the economy. So now the question becomes, can he? And we'll have to see.
Right. And we will see. It's interesting that you said that, because we do membership surveys, and through our membership surveys all of this year, the major concern has been economic pressures. So that's not really surprising because I think that we're seeing that all over. But so also another really hot race was the Michigan U.S. Senate seat, and the battle to control the open seat here in a decade. So there was more than $200 million being spent by all sides, but was money the deciding factor?
First of all, let's just say that's an insane amount of money.
It's insane.
The Harris campaign announced that it was going to have raised $1 billion in the 100 days that she was in the campaign. Like, most campaigns would never get to $1 billion, period, with 2 years of usually running. So the amount of money that was pumped in, losing with all that money is not because you didn't have enough money. It was your message, right? And how you talked about the issues to voters. The $200 million in the U.S. Senate race set a record for Michigan by far. And it's because each of these Senate seats are so valuable, because the Senate only had a 2-seat majority for Democrats. Now it's going to flip based on election results nationally, even though Michigan held for the Democrats, to be a small margin for the Republicans. We got a couple more seats to learn about as the voting gets finished. But that puts President Trump in a place to actually make things move, because right now the House is controlled by Republicans, the Senate is controlled by Democrats. So President Biden, for example, has a hard time moving legislation through. There's not a whole lot of cooperation and working together on the two sides. So President Trump stands the chance to have both the House and Senate with GOP. So it'll be more pressure for him to act on that mandate to improve things like the economy, the border, crime, you name those issues that he brought up during the campaign. We know Alyssa Slotkin well here. She's, I think, really well regarded by most people as a real sane public servant who's done a good job. And I think, frankly, I'm from Ingham County, and I've now lived in Livingston County for 9 years. So I've got a pretty decent view of both. She worked really hard to try to, what we would call in the business, losing by less in Livingston County. So you can say, oh, a Democrat can't win Livingston County. But in a seat that is essentially 50-50, like this congressional seat is, she didn't have a choice. And she made wise decisions to work really hard in Livingston County. I think if we walked around and talked to people, a lot of people say they met her, or they saw her at a parade, or they saw her on TV being just very reasonable as a Democrat in this county. And so she got all the way to 41% of the vote in 2022. It was an excellent Democrat year. It was a year that Governor Whitmer and all the Democrats swept, but she got to her highest lose by a less number, and that helped her win in the congressional district overall. What's interesting about how much of a drag that Vice President Harris was in Livingston County in particular, Slacken only got 38.5% at the last time I looked at the numbers in Livingston County. So she dropped from 41 in her congressional seat, which covered all of Livingston, and lost a few points going backward. She still ran ahead of Harris by 1.5 points. So it just tells you how much Vice President Harris struggled everywhere, but here in particular, Slacken lost momentum from her congressional race, but still ran ahead, and that just tells you the quality of the campaign. Real briefly, not to beat a death, obviously Mike Rogers is the hometown guy here. We know that his mom was the longtime Brighton Chamber legend, right? And his brother still is my township supervisor in Genoa Township. So the Rogers family ties run deep here. He was an excellent candidate for the GOP. The National Republicans knew that this is who they needed to have a chance to win in the general. They did not want somebody who was like off the rails to the far right coming through the primary, so they worked to try to help him. There was a contested primary, and he made it through. But he never had the access to the same financial resources that Slacken did. And it's for a million reasons I won't bore you with, but the bottom line is he didn't. And even though we knew a lot about Alyssa Slacken and Mike Rogers here, or even in the mid-Michigan area, that district just stops, right? So the whole rest of the state, including Southeast Michigan, where half our voters live, didn't know anything about either one of them. So obviously Slacken had the leg up because she had a full year in basically before Rogers even got into the race. And then the Democrats essentially cleared the field for her. And then she's an amazing fundraiser. So she was on television, on radio, on your phone, on your text messages saying, let me tell you about myself. I'm Melissa Slacken. So she had a real big jump there. And it turns out she needed every dollar, every minute of that time to tell that story, because right now I think she's beating Rogers by around 20,000 votes out of a record-breaking, like almost 6 million votes statewide. You think about that margin, it's crazy.
That's wild.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. But she'll be our U.S. Senator, and I think Livingston County will be maybe not represented by the actual votes equally, because they certainly would vote a different way. But as far as us being represented and being known, even though that now she represents the whole state, Livingston, because of the relationship with Alyssa Slacken, probably still they're going to have a door open at least, I would assume. So we probably won to some extent either way here as a county, but we'll definitely have, she'll be in a different spot, especially if the Senate now is in the minority. She won't have as much ability to move bills and do things like that. But based on her record, I assume she's still going to she's going to answer her phone and open her door to us.
I would hope so. I think that based on what you said, it was a great summary of her tenure here. And we hosted her several times through chamber events, and she was always there and present and always willing to listen. So I think that was really vitally important. So hopefully that will continue.
Yeah.
So the effort to control the U.S. Congress was a national one, but several seats here in Michigan played a big role in that. This includes our congressional seat, the 7th District, that is vacated by Alyssa Slacken as she ran the race for Senate. Can you give us an overview how all of the Michigan seats turned out?
Sure. There were 4 seats in Michigan that were being watched nationally, and a lot of money were spent on. With the U.S. House basically 5 or 6 seats apart on who's the speaker and who's the minority leader. Every one of those was very important, so everybody was watching. The 4 basically one is in Grand Rapids with the first-term Representative Hillary Skolton. The second one was just immediately north of us, where Dan Kildee retired. Sounds like a really sane person. He's like, I'm done with this. And this is a guy whose uncle held the seat for like 30 years, right? And he wanted that seat, and he got to Washington, and he had enough. So that was an open seat fight there. Our seat, where we are, the Michigan 7th Congressional, between Tom Barrett and Curtis Hertel. And then over in Macomb County, in a sliver of Oakland, was John James, who ran for the U.S. Senate a couple times and then won his congressional seat it was a repeat battle there against the Democrat Carl Marlinga. So I'll run through those real quick, and then I'll end with our seat. And that 3rd congressional seat, it was the replacement for Peter Meyer, who a lot of people thought would be this rising star for the Republicans. But before he basically even got to sit in a seat, he had to vote on impeachment for Donald Trump 2 terms ago, and he voted yes for impeachment, and he lost his reelection against somebody who ran to his right as a MAGA pro-Trump candidate. Then the seat got altered through redistricting, so it became a little bit more Democratic. They added Muskegon County to it, with Kent County, Grand Rapids being the base of it. And Hillary Scholten's turned out to be a pretty good politician so far. She ran an ad on there this time around that had Gerald Ford's voice reading a speech while it was showing pictures of her. So essentially saying to that audience, I am a moderate, conservative-ish person who has like the tone of our community. And if you're a Republican and don't trust me, I'm willing to play this audio there. And of course there, because that's where he's from, he's still a really big deal. If we played his audio here, I don't know who, very old people would remember who that was, but right, it would be a little different effect. So her opponent didn't end up having very much money, and she did a really good job, got reelected. She'll be there for a while longer. As a side note, for all the areas that are moving more Republican across the state after this election, Kent County, which is kind of like Oakland County in a lot of ways, higher college attainment levels, higher income levels than the rest of the state on average, really active economy. They're actually, I think, leading the state other than Washtenaw in in-state migration, people moving to those areas like Ann Arbor and Grand Rapids. They have now gone blue 3 times in a row. Joe Biden, Gretchen Whitmer, and Kamala Harris as a countywide overall. They still have a lot of local Republicans elected. And then at the state house level, after redistricting 2 years ago, there were a number of newly drawn seats, 5 of them in southern Kent County. They all went to the Democrats in the good year of 2022. They all stayed that way, despite some real battles this time. So Democrat movement there, it's more about the bigger picture realignment of higher education, higher college levels in general moving toward the Democratic Party, and more working class voters moving toward Trump and Republicans in other areas. So that was interesting to watch. The John James race. John James is important to watch, not only as a member of Congress representing Michigan, but a lot of people think that, I mean, he is the rising star of the GOP in the state. We're going to have an open governor's race if we're ready to start talking about that already coming up.
Yeah. Is it too soon?
Not for them, because there's already rumors today that Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan may announce as soon as this week if he's going to run for governor from the Democratic side. So a lot of people want to be the first to get in. So we're going to be hearing about that fast, but he could be a GOP candidate, if not the nominee for Republicans. So it was important that he won that for that reason. And then the Flint seat, which, you know, some of us probably watched ads for that. For those of us that have the right cable system or whatever, you're seeing these bleed through ads from that media market. Paul Young, the Republican, who actually ran in our congressional district last time and lost to Slotkin, he moved there and ran there against a rising star for the Democrats, who I think is going to be an important piece of their messaging puzzle in the state. She's a state senator named Kristen McDonald-Rivet. She did a fantastic job running a really personable campaign. She also ran through that same thread that Hillary Scholten did, that essentially I sound like a moderate Republican. Her ad started off saying, I cut taxes. I love cutting taxes. I cut the senior tax. I cut the hot balloon air tax. I cut every tax
Did you say
possible.
the hot air balloon tax? Yes. The way to throw that in there.
So she ran that all the way through. She ran an excellent campaign. She won that seat. That seems to sort of be trending away from Republicans overall. So we'll see what kind of battles she faces. So let's get to our seat. You know, our seat here, the Michigan 7th, was the most expensive congressional seat in the entire United States 2 years ago, when the Democrats wanted to protect Alyssa Slotkin. The Republicans got the candidate they really wanted in Tom Barrett, you know, a conservative, younger guy with a attractive TV-ready family, which appeared in their ads. He was ready to do the regular dad joke thing. He's wearing a hat that says "Dad" on it, right? Real personable guy. We've all met him many times. Sometimes you have to run a couple times to break through. That's what he did. Curtis Hertel, longtime Democrat operative and elected official in Lansing, comes from a family of elected officials. His brother is in the state Senate in Macomb County, where I think Curtis is originally from. But looking at the numbers, you know, Curtis ran 6 points behind where Slotkin was in this district 2 years ago. It just wasn't the year for him, or maybe for a guy, to be honest, even though there are 2 guys in that race. So we have Tom Barrett will be coming in, will be switching the seat to the Republicans. Michigan overall, therefore, is balancing out, because even though one Democrat seat in Grand Rapids stayed Democrat, one Republican seat in Macomb County stayed Republican, we're going to see a flipped seat here, which is going to help the Republicans potentially move into or keep the majority in Lansing. We're going to be seeing a lot more of Tom Barrett, is the short story there.
Okay. Well, we are running out of time, but I want to hit on your last 2 questions here. I'm probably gonna just jump to the last one.
Okay.
So most people think and hope that we'll get a break from politics for a while, but you say that the next election has already started. Tell us why the race for governor in 2026 is already underway.
What we found now is that we're in the permanent campaign, that is for sure. And what we typically saw it in was in the presidential races, because people wanted to start showing up in Iowa and New Hampshire and the other early states, of which Michigan moved up now. We'll start to see this more often because you only have so much time. Everybody talks about in campaigns, how much money do you have? It's really time, because there's kind of a date certain when this thing ends. And so you work backward from that. You also want to be one of the first people out there talking about it, because getting people's attention and knowledge about you as a candidate through earned media is difficult, because there's a lot less of it. We have a lot fewer reporters here in Livingston County. If you manage to get into the press or on WHMI, you're doing well, right? That's not easy. And we're stuck between two kind of overlapping media markets that don't necessarily care about us in Lansing and Detroit, and actually a third one I can argue with Flint. So we're kind of in a strange spot that way. So, but statewide, we're going to see a lot of candidates start to say, I want to go first. On the Democratic side, they have a wealth of positive politicians with a lot of name ID. The governor is term limited and has to leave, obviously, Governor Whitmer, but they hold the Secretary of State's office with Jocelyn Benson. They hold the Attorney General's office. Remember I said aspiring governor, right? And Dana
stuck,
Nessel.
yeah.
You wouldn't very often see a mayor of the city of Detroit make a run for statewide office, but Mike Duggan is an incredibly smart, incredibly hardworking, successful politician and manager of what he's done there. So he's got a really good story to tell. And then we have our lieutenant governor, also from Detroit, and Garland Gilchrist. And almost every lieutenant governor eventually just watches the other person be governor's like, I can do that. If we look back, almost every single lieutenant governor has at least tried to start a campaign to run for governor. So a lot of people in Lansing fully expect Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist to also throw his name in the hat. That's a lot of people, a lot of things to shake out. And there's other people who've become really well known, like Oakland County State Senator Mallory McMorrow had a viral moment when she was under attack. Ended up on the national news all over the place, raising tons of money and helping Democratic candidates. So there's a lot of activity there. The Republican side's a little more uncertain, but we've seen some candidates from last time already kind of showing up on social media. Tudor Dixon never really left social media and podcasting. Kevin Rinke, who's a car dealer family, a lot of money, self-funder, has started kind of like a podcast, YouTube channel. We could see John James or somebody like that. And then again, on the Republican side, we could see a business person who can independently fund. But on the Republican side, especially with President Trump being President Trump again, it's going to be first a race to see who gets his endorsement. That'll carry the biggest amount of weight and perhaps just decide things. So the Republicans could have a cleaner, shorter primary, less self-abusive for Republicans. The Democrats did such a good job clearing the field for Alyssa Slotkin for U.S. Senate. It was almost unheard of that they kept her from having to waste lots of money and taking on lots of attacks up until the general election. Have to see if they can do that this time, because being governor is an attractive role for a lot of folks, and there's no shortage of powerful Democratic candidates to jump in and run. So we're going to be hearing about that as soon as this week.
Oh, wow.
Woohoo! I'm sure we all can't wait.
And then I'll just mention real quick, the Michigan House of Representatives transferred into Republican control. They're voting on who the new Speaker of the House will be today. It's likely that both the Senate and House leadership will be from West Michigan, not from here. If Matt Hall, the current minority leader of Republicans, becomes Speaker, he's from Calhoun County in that Grand Rapids media market. The current Senate majority leader is Winnie Brinks from Grand Rapids. So one Democrat, one Republican. They're going to have a lot to fight about probably going forward. I think Governor Whitmer coming home from this just amazing 2024 for her book tour, all her social media. She's having a great old time. And now it's like, I got to go back to Lansing and work with these people again. All right. So that'll be a really fun to watch. And so keep your eyes on the news, because you think the election's over or the governor's race is starting. But the lame duck session for the legislature started today, and it's going to go probably through Christmas. And it could result in a ton of things happening, like a fix maybe to sick leave or
let's hope so.
Tip credit, or it could result in a whole lot of screaming and shouting to absolutely nothing. So the Lansing media and all of us gossipers are watching closely.
This is like Christmas early for you, right?
Yeah, right. And then I'll look forward to Christmas vacation.
Yes, there you go.
Yes. Well, John, thank you for joining us today and sharing these very thoughtful insights. It was very enlightening and
punny.
Yes. It's been fun. So thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. Until next time, we'll catch you on the How Business Beat.